Welcome in to the GA Scumbags, your crazy uncle's favorite Duke football podcast. I am Tyler Lester, being joined as always by Noah Lunsford, and the third man, Eli Hartso, will not be here this week. He's got some personal stuff going on, but we still got his input. We all love Eli to death, so hopefully he'll be on next week. Speaking of next week, so from here on out, we will be dropping a podcast every Sunday until the end of football season, starting with the one you're currently listening to. And until we get to football season, myself, Noah, and Eli, when he's on, we're going to be previewing Duke's roster, a little deep dive into there, but we're also going to talk about the rest of the college football landscape and maybe how that affects Duke, starting with this week. So in this episode, you're going to hear us break down Duke's quarterback room. We're going to run through the MAC and the Big Ten. We'll talk about some of our favorite games from both those conferences in years past. We're going to bring up the running back room at Duke, and then we're going to answer the mailbag. So when we get going here, Duke's quarterback room, I'm going to let Noah go first here on the obvious guy. We'll talk about some kid from Texas transferred in the offseason. I don't know if you know anything about him or not, Noah.
Well, I pride myself on knowing a lot about a lot when it comes to football, and Malik Murphy is one of those things that I like to think I know a lot of ball in. Malik just transferred into the Blue Devils. He'll be a redshirt sophomore this year. Came out of California, very highly talented recruitment. Texas has Arch Manning now, but last year and Ark's true freshman year and Malik's redshirt freshman year, all three were on the roster, and Malik was number two. Quinn Ewers, the number one Heisman favorite this year. If you've watched the tape, you know Quinn Ewers is a great quarterback, and what Sark is doing down there in Austin is awesome. Now, Malik last year got to play in two games for the Longhorns where he got starts during Ewers' injuries. First game came against Kansas State, top 25 opponent. Also beat the piss out of NC State in the Pop-Tart Bowl. So shout out the Wildcats for doing God's work and making sure that all state fans can keep telling us bowl games don't matter. But anyways,
5 in a row, by the way.
yeah, 5-0 in the last five bowl games. They can suck my nut, whether it's Detroit, Birmingham, or Shreveport. Duke's 5-0, baby. But Malik in those two games, first one being against a ranked K-State team at home, just managed the game around him really well for a redshirt freshman. Very good mechanics, great deep ball, great accuracy through all three levels of passing. Really sold play action well with his height. You can look at a lot of those play action passes that they ran because Texas is a very pro style offense. And, it's one of the reasons they're so good under Ewers and under Malik and Ark, as all these guys kind of fall into a pro style system, which hopefully that's what Duke does this year, but that's for a later time. But, Malik's progressions, how he reads through the receivers, reads through the route trees, breaks down coverages. To be a redshirt sophomore this coming year, probably 20, 21 years old, he's years ahead of where Riley Leonard was at the same time. They're really not even comparable. There's really nothing Riley did better than Malik at the quarterback position. Now, at being an athlete, did Riley do some things better? Absolutely. He is faster, probably a little more nimble. But as a quarterback, and I say this again, as a quarterback, there is no tangibles in which Riley Leonard was better than Malik Murphy. One of the things we've dealt with a lot with our pod is we were very unfiltered, and a lot of people have not taken a liking to the Riley criticism and things like that. I don't care how Riley Leonard plays at Notre Dame. Don't care if they win the national championship or go 0-12. All I care is while he was at Duke, I appreciate his time, but now it's in the past, and that's kind of how I see the situation. Why I think Murphy is going to be a better leader, better player, better quarterback, and just every aspect better than what we had previously.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit it right on the head there. I'll touch on it for just a second. Murphy's going to be raw. I think he still needs to be coached a little bit, but like you said, was Riley a better athlete? Yeah, for sure. I'll say he was definitely a better athlete. But Malik Murphy has a professional NFL caliber quarterback build. He's got first round arm talent. He's just got to hone it in a little bit. And I think it's going to help him a lot now that he gets to Duke. And we're going to let him just turn loose and sling that thing. Like, if you don't think you're going to see Murphy throwing the ball 50 yards downfield multiple times a game, I know you said we talk about later. Like, you're going to get used to that. I think the dynamic of the offense is going to change completely. And that'll lead into the next guy we're going to talk about, Grayson Loftus. Now, I know some people, look, I love Grayson. Grayson came into the situation last year where he was our third string quarterback. He ended up starting he started 4 games and played in 5 because of injuries. And look, he did okay. 55% completion. He threw for 1,000 yards, had 8 touchdowns, 4 picks. But here's the thing. Malik Murphy is not transferring in from Texas to sit the bench. Now, Loftus has a ton of potential. Matter of fact, I think in a year or two, when Murphy inevitably either goes pro or goes back to Texas to start again or somewhere like that, Loftus is going to be the guy if he sticks around. But I also think Loftus, it's not like Loftus is some surefire, should be starting right now quarterback that we're sitting for Murphy. Like, if you watched Loftus last year, he threw to the ball a lot of times into very questionable windows. He can run, he's athletic, but he needs a lot of development. So I think that's where we're at with Loftus. And I'll let you throw in any other comments about Grayson if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot about Gaffney, South Carolina, where Grayson's from, and if there's one thing I know, it's Gaffney is a football town, and he was a baller at Gaffney, 3-star, highly ranked 3-star, and in the upstate of South Carolina, man, it's not a highly recruited area, not a well recruited area, so like a 3-star down there has potential 4 or 5-star talent. And one thing about Loftus is like, I think the original plan for him was to have 2 years of riding the pine and then to be the guy for 2 seasons. And ideally, I think Duke's still going to commit to that philosophy. Now we got Dan Mahan coming in, absolute dog. But
Oh,
like that's the thing. Like that's how it should work. The Green Bay Packers are the key model for how to do quarterbacks, and that is to have them sit for a little bit, let them learn. There's only a certain kind of player that can come in day one as an 18-year-old and be just unreal. And Loftus, you let him sit the pine for this season, possibly. Murphy has a chance of going to the draft this year. Like, it's a weak quarterback class, and like Duke fans might not want to hear that, but Murphy's probably not going to take the time to take another transfer year anywhere. Like, if things go south this year at Duke, but he has an amazing year, he's just going to enter the draft a year early. So, have Loftus learn from a guy like Malik, who is the truth, and have Loftus get his development time that he's earned and needs to have. And you could see another really great quarterback down the road in 2 seasons while he's training up Dan. And then that just keeps rotating, man. The best programs in football, that's how they do it. And like, if we want to continue being successful at the quarterback room, development is key.
yeah. I mean, and before we get to Henry, like you said, you talked about Loftus. The plan was probably for him to sit this year, anyways. Like, don't forget, guys. Before Elko and Leonard left, we had Tyler Cherry coming in, who was going to be a 4-star recruit out of Indiana. So I mean, it's not like Loftus was the heir apparent to Riley Leonard this year before Malik Murphy got here originally. But speaking of guys that played last year, King Henry Beeland the fourth. You know, I love Henry. Like I still replay that double move he threw to Jalen last year during the NC State game. Like, best throw of the year by far that any quarterback made. Like, he's got crazy arm talent, but I wish he could stay healthy. He's probably going to end up being the 3rd guy in the rotation this year, just due to injuries and how Loftus performed last year. But it's not like, God forbid, knock on wood, if Henry Beeland had to be our 3rd string quarterback and came into a game and all else failed, it's not the end of the world.
No, absolutely not. He's just a product of having a new coach and staff bring in what they think is needed for that position, and the injury bug not being able to really show all his talent. Like, people don't realize, if Beelan doesn't get hurt last year in season, like, Loftus doesn't touch the field. Like, he wouldn't touch the
Yep.
field. Like, not at all. And like, that's not a knock to Loftus. It's just Beelan is a great quarterback. He was a good recruit, a good prospect. And, over time, we'll see how that unfolds, or if he leaves and transfers, more to him. But yeah, I mean, that's just kind of how I see the Beelan situation.
So, all right, and these last three we'll just group together. We're gonna, I'll mention them all, no disrespect, but I think the way it's going to pan out is we're going to have those big three, with Beelan, Loftus, Murphy, and then we're going to have the next three that are kind of, I don't want to say just roster eaters, but they're kind of here to make sure, break glass in case of emergency. And when you look at it, two of these guys, like, we've got a young, very young quarterback room. We've got four sophomores and then two grad transfers. The first of which, Cole Keenan from Middlebury College. He started 16 games. He threw for 4,000 yards, 42 touchdowns, 20 interceptions. I mean, those are, like, I don't care what level, those are good numbers. He'll be a great, veteran presence for the guys. Another one, we actually Rent Monty. We played his Lafayette Leopards last year and put belt to ass, but he's a grad transfer. He's only got 600 passing yards in his career, but again, a grad
Just
transfer,
a, he's
old.
just a signal caller, man. That's all he's gonna be. But it's, you gotta have guys like that. Like you're saying, that veteran presence is so key, that like a lot of Duke fans will see that and be like, "Oh, what a bum." And it's like, no, dude, like, that's a locker room guy. That's a guy that's gonna call in plays from the sideline. That's someone you gotta trust, and like, has to have good knowledge of the game. So shout out those guys for deciding that, like, that's how they want to end their careers at this level of football.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you come to a school like that and you're graduating for a year, you do that, and that gets you in the door of possibly, going to coach down the line, because now that's more or less what they're going to be doing. Like, they're not here to play quarterback necessarily. They're here to help the quarterbacks that are going to be playing. Like, they're coming in to make these guys better, to show them, like, hey, I've done this for 4 years before. Like, this is what we've got to do and stuff like that. And the last one, Donald Tomlin, he's a sophomore. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see him possibly even redshirt this year. But I will say this: he's a freak athlete. He played track and field in high school, played basketball and football. He actually had a decent looking spring game. If we use four quarterbacks on the depth chart, I presume he's going to be number four. Um,
Absolutely.
but I could also see a potential red shirt there out of him, because he's just a true sophomore. So I mean, he's still got that year that we could redshirt him, which I don't
Yep.
think would be a horrible idea.
No.
And so,
Now that all these COVID years are getting phased out, man, we're gonna be able to get back to like real red shirting and real 5 year experiences. Like, and that's so nice. I can't wait.
yeah, no more 29-year-old super seniors that are in their seventh year at their fifth school kind of guys.
Saw a thing today. There's a chick college basketball player that's going into her ninth year. 9 years, bro. That's almost a decade of playing college sports. How ridiculous is that?
Man, that's just NCAA, man. Gotta love them. But so that's the quick overview of Duke's quarterback room. We're gonna have a whole episode where we preview Duke's roster and season a lot more in depth. But to quick summarize, there's a lot of talent in the quarterback room. There's a lot of unproven talent in the quarterback room, and it's young talent. But I think when you look at ACC quarterback rooms that are three deep in terms of just pure talent potential, we've got one of the top ones. Now, buddy, me and Noah have been waiting months to do this next part. We're going to talk about the most underrated and fun conference in all of college football, the MAC. We're going to give you guys a quick little rundown of all the teams in the MAC, kind of some names to watch out for, kind of where we think the teams will fall. But I'm gonna let Noah kick this off, because Noah may love the MAC more than I do. He's a sucker for Tuesday night action.
But there's few things in this world that I actually truly love. It's a small list. Some people might be like, "Oh, that's sad," but like, brother, Maction and Sunbelt are like two of those 10 things. And let me tell you, I don't want to talk ball with anybody that doesn't watch Tuesday night action. Like
Amen.
what else are you doing on a Tuesday night? Like I mean like what could you possibly have going on in your life that's more important? The answer is nothing if you're actually cool and not a fucking loser. If you yeah like you gotta have some swagger to know about the action. There's a certain group of like Americans and you know them when you go to the bar and like you can bring up a team like Toledo or Miami of Ohio, and it feels like you just made a best friend. And like that's what we pride ourselves on here is like as much as we love Duke, we talked about this in the pre-show a little bit. As much as we love Duke football, and like it'll always be like our true love. We love all college football. And there's not a game we won't watch. There's not a game we won't enjoy. I will pull for any game. You know, if I'm turning on the TV and I see somebody's playing NC State, like Akron or something, buddy, I'm a zip. Like I am now an Akron zip. I mean, I love it, and I'm just super stoked to be able to get into the MAC. But I guess I'm gonna go with my team to like watch this year, like biggest turnaround team. And I don't know if you would consider it like a super big turnaround, but Western Michigan, if
The
you know about
Bronx.
Western Michigan, you know about PJ Fleck's historic run there. Row the boat, baby. Go Gophers, who will also
Home
be
of
diving into later.
home of Antonio Brown, resident CTE advocate.
Resident CTE Duke advocate. So last year, Western Michigan, it was a kind of the first year with Lance Taylor. They went 4-8, but they had a very good recruiting class, top 100, which like that's not bad. And they had a freshman running back last year with 1,100 yards, couple of big time Power Five transfers, and just like you look at a team like Western Michigan and the MAC, and you're like tuning in on a Tuesday night. Like that's a team that's going to give you a dog fight. Don't matter what the record is. So kind of like a prediction, I assume. And last year 4-8, 3-5 in conference. This year, I would say flip that and go 8-4 and 5-3 in conference under Taylor's second season.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing you'll learn, and we haven't discussed this yet, so we might agree, we might not. When I start talking about these teams, the thing, especially like with the MAC that I'm looking for, is it's just who do you bring back? Like the teams that bring a lot back are the teams that like are going to be the ones that I perceive to have better years. And we talked about they're bringing in or Jalen Buckley. He's back, freshman of the year in the conference, had 1,000 yards. They're bringing in Sean King, who played at Virginia Tech for 3 years, to be his backup. They're starting a quarterback, Hayden Wolf, who's been in that program for 5 years now. He started 5 last year, so I mean they're going to be old. The defense is bringing back 7 starters. I mean, it's just I think the MAC is going to be really good. But on the flip side of Western Michigan, who brings a ton of experience back, I don't think a single team in the MAC got hit quite as hard as the Ohio Bobcats. Now, the Ohio Bobcats traditionally are one of the best teams in the MAC year in, year out. They always compete. They went 10-3 last year. Tim Albin's in his 4th season. But listen to some of the stuff that they are losing. Quarterback Curtis Rourke, however you pronounce it. Kurt, sorry. He started 3 years. He threw for over 7,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. He's gone. Their running back, Say Bengura, over 800 yards. He's gone. Their top 7 leading receivers, gone. They lost 3 offensive line starters. The defense lost their top 7 tacklers.
Ooh.
Like, dude, that is like crazy. I don't care like who you are. That is so much production like out the window. Now, I will say this. Again, Ohio is one of the top teams in the MAC. They're going to be really young. Um, I just if they get to a bowl game, I think that's a good year for them this year. They're going to have so much turnover.
Oh, 100%. Like, I mean, if Ohio pulls out a 6-6 and goes to the damn Poinsettia Bowl, like, dude, that's such a win. Like, I mean, it adds to the bowl streak and everything, but just like with all that production loss, you just have to imagine it's hard to win more than 2 or 3 games across the board with as competitive as the MAC is. And speaking of competitive, we're gonna go to conference champion picks. No, this is gonna sound like a basic bitch answer, but it's not. And there's fact to back it. If the champion, I'll give you the championship game. I'm gonna pick Miami of Ohio versus Toledo. If you haven't bought in on Toledo yet on your Saturday bet slips, I'm sorry. Bet Toledo money line every week. Bet the over. Everything Jason Candle does is sick. Like, fun fact for all you Duke Blue Devils out there, Jason Candle was on a short list of Duke people that could possibly be hired. I mean,
Yeah, that he's
he
going
was
to be a Power
interviewed
Five
by
coach.
some dogs. Like he literally turned down a few jobs this year because he thinks that there's going to be something bigger and better like in the waiting. But Candle's in his 8th year, 65-35, had the 87th overall rate class. I mean, just some really good transfers, a lot of JUCO guys. Now, I love a JUCO transfer at the group of 5 level. You get some guys that were probably Power Five or just never were smart enough to get the offers, and they got a JUCO, and you get them with some age and with some seasoning on them, and like, boy, they can play football. And they return 5 of their top 6 receivers this year. That's huge for a team like that was scoring so many points last year. They did lose their entire offensive line, but it's the MAC. If there's one thing the MAC has in plenty, it's big white Midwestern offensive linemen. Like there's never a bad offensive line in the MAC. They are just a carbon copy of the same people. And for that reason, I'm definitely gonna pick Toledo to win the conference this year.
Yeah, I mean, betting on Jason Candle is always a safe bet. Like, I mean, go ahead and learn to name people. He's going to be coaching the Power Five. He is such, folks. Here's how good he is. He's such a good coach at Toledo. He's turning down Power Five jobs left and right because he knows he's going to get to pick the job he wants. Like that's crazy at that level. Like you said, they lost some stuff, but they're bringing like a bunch back. They also added on the offensive line an Ohio State transfer, Jacob James. So that like, just the size that he's going to have is huge when he comes down to the mat. They added a linebacker transfer, Lance Dixon, and like everyone is already. I've heard that name a lot, just like reading up on Toledo. I think that's a safe bet for the conference champions. I'm gonna go to a team real quick that off of no good reason but gut feeling and reading on them. I really think Bowling Green is going to make the MAC championship game. They went
BGSU.
they went 7-6 last year. Scott Leffler, he's in his 4th season. The recruiting class is ranked 112th, but I mean, when you're in the MAC, you're shooting for if you can get above 100 in the MAC, you had a really good year. They're bringing in Malcolm Johnson out of Auburn, a wide receiver. RJ Garcia, the second, a wide receiver from Kansas State, and they're bringing in Todd Bumpus from Cincinnati, cornerback. Now, Connor Blazik is their quarterback. You may have heard that name before because he's played and started games for Missouri and Indiana in the past at quarterback. He's back for his 2nd year. Their leading rusher is back. They bring 4 offensive line starters back. They do only bring back one of their top 5 receivers, which is fine. But when you can run the ball like that, they're not going to need to throw it much. Their defense was tied for the lead in the country in turnovers forced last year, and they're bringing 6 starters back. Now, I will say, shout out to the MAC. I don't know if you guys know this. They play some rough non-conference games. Like Bowling Green's playing Penn State and Texas A&M. We haven't touched on Akron yet when we get there, but they're playing Ohio State, Rutgers, and South Carolina. Like some of these guys are playing brutal schedules, but I think, I'm gonna say it outright. I'm gonna pick Bowling Green to win the conference outright. Betting
There we
against
go.
Jason Candle is so stupid, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna take the Falcons, baby.
If anyone's gonna lose a bet, it's gonna be Tyler Lester. So I mean, who else but
Absolutely.
who else but the boy? Speaking
Bowling
of
Green, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Bowling Green fans everywhere are in shambles. Bowling
Oh,
Green, we're gonna
12.
we're gonna reach out on Twitter to you guys and get interactive because we'd love for you guys to hear this.
0-12
Speaking
is
of
coming.
speaking of MAC games, we're getting ready to break down a composed list here. Me and Tyler, we agreed on these 5 games, so we're gonna give you a top 5 that we share today. And we're talking about top 5 Maction games ever, from Tuesday night to Saturday night, all week long. The Mac just gives you football to watch. And if you can't appreciate that, I can't appreciate you as a person. I'm gonna lead it off here. I'm gonna lead it off with the 2012 Conference Championship game, NIU versus Kent State. So let me tell you, NIU and Duke fans will remember this. We played NIU in a bowl game shortly a couple of years after that up in Detroit.
Yep.
NIU has a great football program. They are consistently in bowl games. They're consistently upsetting Power Five teams. They always schedule hard. Like it's a good football program. And when we faced them, like they were in their peak. Like the early 2010s was just peak NIU was facing off against Kent State, somebody that had a really good program back then, but has really faltered in the new age of the action ever since all the teams integrated. Hoping Kent State could turn around, but that game, 44-37, double overtime action. You know what I love more than action? I love overtime action because that means I get to watch it more. You know what I love more than that? Double overtime action. In a game that mean that much, and like a team like NIU, they were sitting ranked 19th in the country, I believe. And you're talking about a team back then that like win that conference championship and your bowl game goes from playing in the shithole to playing somewhere real nice, sunny and warm. Like I mean, it meant a lot, and it was a great football game, one of the best action games ever.
Yeah, that, and Kent State was ranked 18th. So I don't know how many of you people remember how the BCS system used to work. But in the BCS system, when bowl games, the big bowl games were still relevant, not just playoff fillers. The highest rated team in the BCS system was going to play in a bowl game that year. So, like, if say App State in 2013 would have finished ranked 8th in the BCS standings, well, they would have been sent to the Sugar Bowl or the Fiesta Bowl or the Orange Bowl. So like they more or less they were playing for like a BCS bowl back then, which is just wild to think about. 2 MAC teams both playing for a BCS bowl bid, conference championship on the line. It goes to double overtime. Like that is just the sickest of all sicko things you could dream of. And real quick, to touch on like where those 2 teams are, you talked about Kent State not being, as up as they have been. They went 1-11 last year. Kenny Burns' first season. He's returning really not a lot. Uh, their quarterback Thomas Ulatowski played in 10 games, but it's his first year starting. Gavin Garcia had 500 yards. They're going to be their lead rusher. Um, Offensive lineman started 3 freshmen and gave up 41 sacks. So, I mean, their D line returns all 5 guys. Starting linebacker Caleb Johns has missed 2 seasons in a row, but he's starting this year. And I just, the world's better when the Golden Flashes are winning. It's just tough sledding. Northern Illinois, they went shocker 7-6 last year. Probably going to be that about there again. They find ways to win. But I will say they've got a sneaky good recruiting class coming in. They've got the 80th ranked edge in the country coming in Ivan Moore, and an offensive tackle ranked 70th in the entire nation in Ben Gustafson. All MAC first team running back and Tario Brown returns after running for 1,300 yards. His backup had 500 yards last year. He's back. The O-line has 3, quote, new starters who have 33 starts between them. Let's see here. Trayvon Rudolph is going to be an all-MAC candidate. Grayson Barnes had 5 tight ends. NIU rotates, Noah, get this. a defensive line in the MAC that rotates 10 defensive linemen, and only 3 of those players left
Oh, I love
last
it.
year.
Oh, I love it. Just
So
makes
I
me
mean,
fucking come.
that's going to be scary. I think NIU is going to be a sleeper. A MAC game I'm going to touch on, and this one's a pretty infamous one. If you remember, we're going all the way back to 2020. Western Michigan 42, Toledo 38. This
Mm.
was a random like Wednesday night, I believe. It
Oh
was
yeah.
the second week of the season. Matter of fact, both teams were 1-0. Western Michigan was down 10 points with no timeouts left, and there was 2 minutes left in the game, and they had the ball. They won the game by 4 points, all because they scored a touchdown. They got the extra point back, and with 19 seconds left, they run a fake spike, get a wide open touchdown, and then Toledo somehow almost throws a game-winning Hail Mary that gets intercepted. So I mean that game to me is like the peak personification of MAC, just pure and utter chaos in a close, high-scoring ball game. Before we head to our Big Ten breakdown, we're going to finish wrapping things up here in the MAC and give you a quick overview of what's left in the MAC of the teams we haven't touched on. You've got the Akron Zips. Joe Moorhead's in his 3rd season here. They went 2-10 last year. Akron's going to be a really interesting team. I think they're going to get to right around a bowl game. They brought in several transfers. Taj Bullock or Cal transfer Ben Finley are going to be their quarterback option. You've got the Ball State Cardinals. They are coming off a 4-8 season with Mike New bringing in the 125th ranked class. Presumed starting quarterback Khalil Kelly has moved to cornerback, and Chase Harrison from Marshall, I'm assuming, will be the starting Q. Very good offensive line. 4 starters back. The defense is young, however. I'm curious to see how quarterback pans out before I give a prediction there. A new team that I'm excited about, the Buffalo Bulls. 3-9 last year. Pete Limbo comes in off his first season where he's a winner. He's coached Lehigh, Elon, and Ball State before. Previous South Carolina special teams coordinator, where former head coach Maurice Linguist has taken over at Bama as the co-defensive coordinator. They're bringing in the 119th ranked class. The wide receiver core is old, but not a lot of experience, oddly enough. It's interesting. All MAC guard Tyler Doty returns on the offensive line. CJ Agbana is their quarterback. He's 6'2", 212, and is very fast. A very young running back room, so the offensive is going to be very creative, to say the least. Their linebacker, Sean Dolick, had 147 tackles in 2022 and missed last year with a leg injury, but is ready to go this year. Could be an all MAC caliber linebacker there. So I think, Buffalo is very young, but they're going to have a decent season. The Chippewas of Central Michigan, Jim McElwain, Florida Gators, former head coach in his 6th year at Central Michigan, 5-7 last year. They're bringing in some Iowa transfers at cornerback and linebacker. Tommy McIntosh is in from Wisconsin, and Joe Labus comes in at Iowa to play quarterback. Currently, Joe is the favorite at quarterback, although it's listed as a race still. Their 2 leading rushers returning, Luke and Bailey. They play well together, and they will presumably try to carry most of the offense. They bring back 3 of their leading receivers, 3 offensive linemen return. All MAC defensive tackle Jason Williams is back, but after that, there's a lot of depth concerns at the defensive line position. And second team All MAC Dante Kent, cornerback, is heading the secondary. They've got a very favorable schedule, but quarterback is a big concern. 6-7 wins is probably a good expectation there. The Eastern Michigan Eagles, 6-7. Chris Creighton in his 11th year down there, veteran head coach, 90th ranked class coming in. Delbert Mims, the third, a transfer in from NC State, comes in. Porter Rooks, NC State wide receiver, comes in. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. quarterbacks are transferring in from Minnesota and Buffalo. Buffalo transfer Cole Snyder is assumed to be the QB1. Delbert Mims had 8 touchdowns for state last year. He's going to lead the way at running back. They're bringing back one of their top 3 receivers in J.B. Mitchell. The offensive lineman's a big question mark. 2 starters returned, but they gave up 32 sacks last year, so that'll be interesting. Peyton Price at nose guard has NFL potential. The D-line could be very, very good. JT Killen's coming in from Coastal to Carolina to play linebacker, where he had 65 tackles. And Daquan White heads the secondary. He had 12 passes broken up as a freshman. I think this could be a very, very interesting team at Eastern Michigan. The defense is going to be solid. If the offensive line holds together and their new pieces all gel, I think they could be a sneaky, sneaky team in the MAC. And lastly, we'll bring up the Miami, Ohio, the Falcons. They're the Hawks, my apologies, the Red Hawks. They went 11-3 last year, champions of the MAC. Chuck Martin in his 11th season there. They're bringing in a solid class. Josh Ringer's the 30th ranked freshman athlete, which is very good. Brett Gabbert, potential player of the year in the MAC, missed the second half of last season and has NFL potential. The wide receivers are very talented. They don't have one real standout guy at running back, however. The offensive line is probably going to be one of the best, if not the best in the MAC, returning 4 starters, which is very good. Running back, going to be a big question there. The defensive line, led by end Brian Ogwu, who has 105 tackles and 13 sacks in 2 years. So good luck getting him blocked. Ty Wise and Matt Solopik had 265 tackles last year, and they both returned at linebacker. Eli Blakely, starting cornerback, is going to move over to safety. Outside of that, the secondary could be a big issue. However, if the running game develops, it'll be wouldn't be shocked at all to see Miami of Ohio back in the MAC championship game. And with them playing Northwestern, Cincinnati, and Notre Dame early in the season, I'm not ruling out an early season upset. All right, so now we head to the Big Ten. And for those of you that don't know, a lot of change in the Big Ten. Oregon, USC, UCLA, and Washington have all joined the Big Ten starting this year coming up. And the Big Ten's also changing their conference layout. They're going to the ACC style where divisions are no more. And now they will take the top 2 teams record-wise in the conference for the conference championship game, which makes things interesting, which is why my first pick for the conference championship game might surprise damn near anyone that's ever heard of Rutgers University. The Scarlet Knights went 7-6 last year, 3-6 in conference play. Greg Schiano's back, 16th season at Rutgers, over 2 stints. He's bringing in the 55th ranked recruiting class. Athan, if I butcher your last name here. Kalik Manis is transferring in from Minnesota to play quarterback. Massive guy with a big arm, like screams Ben Roethlisberger. They're bringing back their leading wide receiver, Christian Dremel. Kyle Monagai returns after posting 1,200 yards, as well as his backup, Samuel Brown. Now, here's a crazy stat, Noah. Their offensive line gave up the fewest sacks and tackles per loss per game in the entire country last year, and they're bringing 4 of those guys back.
Oh, I love Rutgers. Rutgers made me a lot of money last year, and Rutgers paid the rent more times than I can count. So I'm a huge lover of all things Scarlet.
Robert Longerbeam had 12 passes broken up. He's back. Their secondary in total between Shaquan Loyal, Flip Dixon, their secondary is returning 200 tackles over their careers. That's a lot. Muhammad Tor is back at linebacker, a casual 93 tackles last year. And get this, with how the Big Ten scheduling works, USC, UCLA, and Washington are the 3 toughest games that Rutgers is going to have to play this year. So, I mean, it's very much achievable that Rutgers hits 10 wins, and if the rest of the conference cannibalizes itself, Rutgers is going to Indianapolis. And I'm going to bank on the Big Ten eating itself alive here, and I'm sending the Scarlet Knights to Indy.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with believing, and there's nothing wrong with believing in the Scarlet Knights. I can't say I'm following those same lines this year. Now I will say if I have a sleeper team to go, I would definitely say Northwestern falls into that category. Like, not
Yeah,
Northwestern, but Rutgers. If Rutgers is playing who I think will win it, and this year I think the Big Ten is Oregon's to lose.
absolutely.
Oregon is poised with Dan Manning. You know, that was just huge to keep him away from Bama. Now I'm not gonna dive in if he actually got a job offer from Bama, but it seemed pretty credible at the time. And just for Oregon to keep him, for Oregon to, bring in a stellar recruiting class, bring in great portal guys, really not lose that much. I definitely think guaranteed one of the two opponents will be Oregon. My second, that's, not really a sleeper, but just who I think is the second best team in the conference is Ohio State. Think that Ryan Day has a lot to prove this year, and I think with Sharon Moore taking over at Michigan, there's going to be a slight fall off. A lot of talent left the Big Blue. So, I've got nothing against Michigan, but I think this year they're going to be a 3-loss team, and like that's the ceiling. Definitely don't think they're going to get past Texas. I don't think they're going to get past Ohio State. There's a good chance. I don't necessarily know schedule wise, but if they for certain are playing like Penn State, Michigan State, or Wisconsin, I see them dropping one of those 3 games. It's just that kind of year. With the new additions, you're going to have some big time first games that mean a lot to a lot of these teams. And you could definitely see some upsets in those regards. So I definitely see myself with a Ohio State Oregon matchup, and with Oregon definitely winning the Big Ten.
Yeah, absolutely. And real quick to touch on a few of the things you just like. The Big Ten this year has so many storylines going on in it. So yeah, outside the fact that you're bringing in like the 4 new teams, Ryan Day has to beat Michigan this year. Like Michigan has owned his ass the last few years. They haven't made a Big Ten championship game. Like there's pressure on Ryan Day because they've arguably got one of the 4 deepest teams in the country. It's got to be this year to beat Michigan. Like you just said, speaking of Michigan, man, they lost a lot. Like, not only do you lose, John Harbaugh to the NFL, your starting quarterback's gone to the NFL, your starting running back's gone to the NFL. They don't have a quarterback right now. Legitimately, their quarterback is a 5-man battle. I think
Not
Sharon Moore
not
could,
where you want to be.
yeah, I think Sharon's going to do a good job there. But listen to like some of the teams they play this year. They play Ohio State. Of course, they'll play Michigan State rivalry game. Oregon, USC, Washington, and Texas.
Yeah,
That
boy,
is a
Texas week
brutal,
2 is crazy.
like that is a brutal schedule. And like you said, I mean, Michigan is still going to be good, folks. Like 8-9 wins is still like with that schedule, 8 or 9 wins is very very good because that means you probably
They are
lost to
Outback
Texas.
Bowl good.
Yeah, I mean, and who knows if you beat Ohio State, Oregon, or Texas? I don't see it happening. But you beat one of those 3 and win every other game you're supposed to win. You fall into 10 wins and somehow you don't drop off at all. Uh, another team I think is worth watching. Speaking of storylines, it's it's Penn State. I think James Franklin is a very good ball coach. However, James Franklin has to beat the allegations that he can't beat Ohio State and Michigan.
Yeah,
Now
this
that
is
the
a big year.
now that the playoffs gone to 12 teams, there's no reason they shouldn't make the playoff. Like it's playoff or bust for James Franklin, in my honest opinion, as an outsider that doesn't like know how the fan base feels. You're bringing Drew Aller back at quarterback. Julian
Mid.
Fleming's coming in. So I mean, it's playoff or bust for James Franklin. Another playoff or bust guy. Noah, I'm sure you loved when he left Oklahoma. We'll touch up on Lincoln Riley real quick. He was supposed to be the savior down there at USC, and yeah, he really hadn't done much. I think this year is really going to be his make or break year down there.
Yeah, I definitely think that another team like Ryan Day and Franklin are in a very like similar situation as to what Harbaugh was in about 4 years ago. Could not win the big game. Could not beat Ohio State. I mean, like things were getting dicey in Ann Arbor. Like people were wondering if Harbaugh was the guy. And I think the fan bases, especially in Happy Valley, they've, with everything that school's gone through and like Franklin bringing it back to the light and like it being shunned upon the way it is now, like they're still not going to be complacent with letting it go on forever. So I definitely think this is a hot year for like coaches to have a lot of must-win games in that conference.
Yeah, I think it's going to make for some really exciting football. And the last team I kind of want to touch on before we go into our favorite games here, and it's a team that we're going to see in week 2 as we'll make the trip up to Evanston, is going to be the Northwestern Wildcats. Now, Northwestern went 8-5 last year. David Braun stepped in like right before the season started last year. And I mean, he filled in, like, he did a great job with a team that was already projected to not be very good. Then, the coach stuff happens. Braun comes in. Mike Wright's going to come in at quarterback. He's played at Vanderbilt and Mississippi State, so he's got experience. Cam Porter has 330 career carries at running back. They receiver room's young. Offensive line's going to be very young. But, man, that defense, it's the Big Ten. They're going to play defense. But
Dude,
Northwestern's
that team's good.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Northwestern wins 8 games again.
Dude,
It wouldn't be a
Duke
shock.
fans might be very upset on that Saturday. Like, do I think Duke will win? Yes, but is this Northwestern's best chance to get back at us? Absolutely. They are good. Like they are going to be a competitive football team. You're talking about a team that like when a team like Oregon or USC or UCLA has to go out there past the month of October and it's like a cold Friday night Fox game, like it's going to be miserable for those teams to go see Northwestern. They don't want to play the Northwesterns of the world. They are scumbags. Like I mean, they are just knock you out, hard hitting Midwestern, just farmers. I mean, that's how they play ball, and they're real smart. They're real smart over there, kind of like a Duke style school. And Northwestern's had a lot of football success, so that's kind of something that I've always enjoyed about this series is like they're kind of carbon copy kind of schools, and how football is, it's a harder sport to recruit to in those situations and to field full big rosters. And like Duke and Northwestern have both had very decent and good success over the years, just getting past those hurdles.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of owned Pat Fitzgerald the last back half of this series, but man, that second week of the season when we go up to Evanston, that's going to tell us a lot about like how Duke's going to be this year because Northwestern isn't the Northwestern you saw 2 or 3 years ago. Like they're going to be some dogs in that game.
Yeah,
Now,
it's time. That'll be a game Duke will show us if they're just gonna let their nuts hang or not. Like that's
yeah,
the
absolutely.
game that we find out. Like, okay, are we still, easy street runs through the sewer, David Feely football, or are we like, oh shit, this sucks again? I don't think it's gonna be that, but like going up there to Evanston, you got to let your nuts hang. You got to be the bigger man, and I think Duke is poised to be the bigger man that game. They just got to go out there and prove it.
Absolutely. So now we're gonna hit up a few of our favorite games from the Big Ten past. And I say the past when we made this list, we didn't realize damn near every game is from the year 2016. Uh, that was just the Big Ten year. Now I know there's a certain game that Noah's going to touch on, but one that I'm going to bring up that just lives in my memories from the year before in 2015. And it was when Michigan State went into the big house and absolutely stunned Michigan on a walk-off blocked punt. That was like I just vividly remember that game is what started the quote surrender cobra becoming a thing. Like the pan to the guy in the glasses just fist on his face, just like in all the dog pile in the end zone, like big time rivalry game at night, the big house. A walk-off block punt is absolutely absurd to pull off.
One of the coolest, like, we've got to live through so many like Hall of Fame games, especially like it's the people this broadcast reaches to. Our whole like demographic, this age group, we have seen the fucking block punts, touchdown game. We've seen Auburn, Bama. We've seen Georgia, Auburn. We've seen just some Tennessee, Georgia, some of the craziest endings to college football games ever. I hate to break everybody's heart. Duke, Miami shouldn't happen. Still will go down as one of the craziest things to ever happen in college football. And like we've lived that within the last decade. So like we have just been in such a prime position for good college football.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy the level of games that we've gotten to witness, some of the endings that like we've got to see, and it's just go back to this last year, like the Notre Dame Ohio State game, the like 4th and 1, and you just stop a QB sneak to win the game in the bit, like man. So another really, and now this would be deemed a conference game this upcoming season. In 2016 in the Rose Bowl, I'll let you dive a little into USC and Penn State because I know we both love that one.
Babe, wake up! He's talking Rose Bowl. I mean, the granddaddy of them all, the most wonderful bowl game to ever grace our presence. If there's anything I want in my life more than Duke going to a Rose Bowl college football playoff game and being able to go out there and witness that, then I can't think of it. I don't think there ever will be. I'm a Rose Bowl man. I love Pasadena, love the roses, love the holidays. Just it's such a special thing to appreciate. And one of the greatest Rose Bowl games ever that wasn't played in Durham, North Carolina, 2016, Penn State, USC. Think about it. You got your XSL cipher on in the background. It's 2016. Lil Uzi Vert's at its peak. The word swag is back. Not all this new shit these kids say. Just everything around you. Life is good. Little Yachty. I mean, he's going crazy. Drake on a tear. Drake and Meek Mill beef. Like, so much going on. But think about the football. Everything just was perfect. And one of the best games ever. The final was not the way we would want to see it. I will say that. The final sucks. But 52-48 USC over Penn State. There were just, I mean, it was play after play after play after play. There was not a single snap that you could go back and watch that game and be like, oh, that was kind of boring. I mean, it was probably one of the most thrilling games you could ever watch. And them boys back then were just, neither team in that year was honestly all that phenomenal offensively. Like, Penn State did not have a lot going on. I believe that was the Hackenberg era.
It was.
Yeah, like Christian Hackenberg, love the dude to death, but bum, certified bum. Penn State was like a good defensive team, USC back then, I mean, that was kind of whatever. They were just kind of mid. And for them to be in that Rose Bowl was kind of crazy thinking back at. But for both those teams to go out there and throw up 52-48 is just unreal.
Yeah, I mean, I vividly remember watching that game, like on the edge of my seat watching that game till it concluded, just like, oh my God, like every play you didn't know what was going to happen. And speaking of games you didn't know what was going to happen, let's dive into the 2004 college football season.
I knew it.
Just an absolutely disgustingly beautiful disgrace of a football game. Penn State and Iowa played a football game in 2004, and the final score was 6-4, folks. And this was before Kirk Ferentz was a big deal. Like, this is like probably what started the whole Ferentz era thing because he was around back then.
Oh, yeah.
315 combined total yards of offense, 7 turnovers, often referred to as the ugliest game in the history of football. I mean, that's peak Iowa right there. And of course, they won. And the game
Oh,
ended, by the way, on Iowa possessing the ball for 5 straight minutes.
no, it's just so scumbag. It's just so scumbag.
That is the most Iowa football thing I think I've ever heard. Possess the ball for 5 straight minutes and just win by 2 points in a 6-4 ball game. Like that
Oh
is just
man.
disgusting.
Iowa punts, baby, and we love it. We love it.
Yeah, nothing hits quite like the old Iowa punt special. Now that we've shared some of our favorite Big Ten games, before we hit the mailbag up and wrap up this podcast, let's dive in quickly to the rest of the conference here. Kicking things off with the Illini. 5-7 last year. Brett Bielema returns for his fourth year, bringing in the 45th rated class. Luke Altmaier had 1,900 yards and 13 touchdowns. As a sophomore, he's back leading the way. Their top three offensive linemen returned, but the top running back, tight end, receiver have all departed. The defense has lost a ton. So they're going to be very young with a lot of turnover, but quarterback is definitely the strength here. I wouldn't rule out 7 to 9 wins for them, but also missing a bowl game is quite possible. But I do like the old Brett Bielema. Indiana, the Hoosiers are coming off a 3-9 season. However, they've lured Kurt Signetti away from JMU, who's coming in with 119-35 career record. Curtis Rourke, as we mentioned earlier in the podcast, transfers in from Ohio to play quarterback. The Illini brought in 8 skill players in the portal, as well as returning team's leading wide receiver, Donovan McCulley. There's current running back battle ongoing, we're being told, and the offensive line is very, very young. JMU is, however, bringing in Mikal Kamara and James Carpenter to anchor the defensive line. Aiden Fisher and Jalen Walker are going to come over to play linebacker, and the secondary being led by Jamari Sharp. Signetti's a proven winner. Indiana's got some tough games on their schedule, but I don't think it's impossible to say that we don't see the Hoosiers in a bowl game. The Iowa Hawkeyes. Kirk Ferentz is in his 26th season, coming off a 10-4 record, bringing in a 50th ranked recruiting class. Cade McNamara, former Michigan quarterback, missed the bulk of last year with an injury. They will have him back, and they're going to go as far as he can take them. Luke Lakely is a tight end. He will have a very big year because Iowa and tight ends. They're bringing a lot of experience back on the offensive line, but the offensive line last year was a really major concern. They did not perform to Iowa standards, to say the least. The running back and receiver positions are thin with no real standouts. However, Jay Higgins led the Big Ten in tackles and is going to return at linebacker alongside Nick Jackson. Of course, Cooper DeJean is in the NFL now, but Quinn Schultz, Xavier Nwangpa, and Sebastian Castro all are back in the secondary. The D-line at Iowa is going to be very deep, but this schedule is brutal. Per usual, they'll probably have one of the best defenses in the country. I think McNamara is the real deal, but is he going to have weapons, and will the line hold up? We'll see. The Maryland Terrapins, 8-5 last year. Mike Loxley's back for his 6th season, 54th ranked recruiting class. They are engaged in a 5-man quarterback battle. MJ Morris from NC State and Billy Edwards Jr. started the bowl game last year, 2 of the presumed frontrunners in that battle. The offensive line is deep, but it's very young. Roman Hemby, 1,000-yard rusher back in 2022, is in. And the wide receiver room at Maryland is loaded. Caden Prather has NFL experience, or will be playing in NFL games. Taj Felton is a speedy playmaker. They returned 6 defensive starters. Linebacker Ruben Hippolyte and Dante Trey Jr., a safety, really stand out. Loxley's a solid head coach. He's done great things at Maryland. 3 straight bowls. If they can figure out quarterback, 4 in a row is definitely on the table there. Spartans from Michigan State. Jonathan Smith comes in for his first year, taking over for a 4-8 program. 31st ranked class coming in. True sophomore Aiden Childs follows from Oregon State, and Childs has so much potential at quarterback. He could be a generational kind of guy, extremely athletic, strong arm, but again, he is a true sophomore that saw limited playing time last year. Nate Carter returns after rushing for 800 yards. That'll be an interesting running back room there. Matori Foster had 43 catches and led the team, and he's back. Freshman Nick Marsh is turning heads. However, the offensive line is a big, big concern. The defensive line has very front-loaded talent, and after that, the depth is a worry. Jordan Hall at linebacker, however, and Malik Spencer in the secondary will very much make noise back there and help try to shore up the back end of Michigan State's defense. I like Smith and I like Childs a lot, but I think they're a year or two out really competing again in the Big Ten. Next up, the Golden Gophers will row the boat. PJ Fleck in his 8th season, coming off a 6 and 7 year, 33rd ranked recruiting class coming in. Max Brosmer is going to be their new quarterback. He transfers in from New Hampshire, where he led the FCS in passing, which is a great feat, no doubt. Daniel Jackson at wide receiver is a stud, but after that, it's really a bunch of question marks. Darius Taylor led the Big Ten in rushing last year after the first month of the season, and then he missed several games, but he is back, and I expect a very big year. The offensive line brings 4 starters back, and Cody Lindenberg on defense has a case for all Big Ten at linebacker. 4-star freshman Coy Parrish is going to attempt to replace Tyler Nubbin at safety, who just got put in the NFL. The D-line has several holes on the inside I'm kind of worried about, and a very difficult schedule. Minnesota should go bowling, but after that, more than 7 wins is really going to be rough. And here we go with Nebraska. The Cornhuskers, Matt Rule in his 2nd season after the Carolina Panthers stint. He went 5 and 7 last year, but the man rebuilds college teams like there's no tomorrow. In year 2, he's bringing in the 23rd ranked class. And he flips 5-star quarterback Dylan Raiola, Georgia, and he is going to be starting right away. Malachi Coleman is a receiver to watch out here. Gabe Irving Jr. at running back will be very productive. Bryce Benhart has 41 starts at tackle, by the way, coming into his last season, and is tied for the team record. So he is going to obviously break that record. The 11th ranked defense in the country last year has 3 of their 4 leading tacklers back. Isaac Gaffer, who was listed as a, quote, rover, had 86 of them and 8 pass breakups. Expect to hear his name a lot. Linebackers, Javin White and John Bullock combined for 101 tackles in return. And my favorite name in all college football is Nash the Polar Bear Putmacher, who is going to anchor the defensive line. If Raiola lives up to his heightened expectation, Nebraska could push 8 to 9 wins, but I think bowl game at minimum should be the expectations for year 2 under Coach Rule. The Boilermakers, Purdue 4 and 8 last year in Ryan Walters' first season. He is back. They bring in the 29th ranked class, and Gus Hartwig, a center, is going to anchor the middle of the offensive line. Illinois' running back, Reggie Love, who was a stud, is going to transfer over and join Devin Mockabee. And the running game is going to be very good for this team. Hudson Card, former Texas quarterback, is going to return to play quarterback for the Boilermakers. So the offense has got a lot of potential. Georgia transfer, however, C.J. Smith will have to take over as the lead receiver, as they are losing a lot at receiver. Tight end Max Clare is going to be poised for a big year. I expect him to be 2nd, if not 1st, in receptions. Linebacker Cole Brevard, 335-pound Cole Brevard at defensive tackle will anchor the front of the defense. And that is a big man, a very big man. Kydron Jenkins had 15.5 tackles for loss. Yanni Karloftis is also joining and returning at linebacker, where I think that is going to be their defensive strength. Safety Dylan Thiemann had 106 tackles with 6 interceptions. Colorado transfer Kendrick Breedlove and Georgia transfer Nyland Green joined him in the secondary. Purdue is trying to rebuild. However, the schedule is brutal. I would say 4 to 5 wins again where they're at, and that wouldn't be a slight on Ryan Walters, who's trying to get that program back on its feet. The UCLA Bruins. Oh, UCLA. Chip Kelly is gone. He has taken the Ohio State offensive coordinator position, and in comes Deshaun Foster, his first year as the head coach. He inherits an 8-5 team and brings in the 44th ranked recruiting class. But most notably, former Kansas City Chief offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy joins his staff at the same position. Ethan Garbers played quarterback some last year and is set to fully take over and hold the reins this year. The wide receiver room has about 5 or 6 guys that are legitimate threats, but no true number one. So it'll be interesting to see how the wide receivers play out. TJ Harden and Keenan Jones will be running behind 4 returning offensive linemen. The defensive line will be solid. Navy transferred Jacob Busick and Devin Apui joined 300-pound Gary Smith and Jay Toya in the middle. Defensive line, however, does not get very deep after that. Can Madrano and Olufume Aladejo were second and third on the team in tackles at linebacker, and they both returned. Secondary is laden with transfers, so if they can gel, it'd be interesting. I don't know that UCLA wins 8-9 again, but they're going to be the most exciting and curious team to see in the Big Ten. They could upset anybody, and they could lose to anybody. It'll be really fun to watch them. We've touched on Lincoln Riley and USC before, and now we go to the Washington Huskies. Jed Fish is in his first year at Washington after they went 14-1 and were national runner-ups. He comes in from Arizona, where in 3 years he went 16-21 and quickly built the Wildcats. They inherited the 30th ranked class. Michael Penix is out. Replacing him is Will Rogers, who was a very good quarterback, but more of a game manager. The wide receiver room lost 3,000 yards from last year. I don't know how you replace that. Jeremiah Hunter from Cal is probably going to be the lead way with 145 career receptions. They bring in 5 new offensive linemen. Jonah Coleman comes in with a Fish from Arizona to play running back after he had 800 yards on the ground last year. Senior Daniel Nagata will be a nice veteran presence in the running back room and serve as the primary backup. By the way, the Huskies' defensive coordinator is Steve, son of Bill Belichick. So it'll be curious to see how he works out down there. Carson Bruner and Alfonso Tupolata, third and fourth leading tacklers, are going to run a 1-2 at linebacker. The defensive line is bringing a whole lot of new players in. Ephesian Prysock from Arizona and Jordan Shaw from Indiana will really help returning Elijah Jackson in the secondary, where there's a lot of depth actually in the back end. I expect quite the fall off from Washington following last year's 14-1 season. However, Jed Fish knows how to rebuild places, and Washington does have pieces in place, so don't rule out a bowl game for the Huskies. And lastly, the Wisconsin Badgers, 7-6 last year in Luke Fickell's first year coming out of Cincinnati. Luke brings in the 25th ranked recruiting class. Miami's former quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke, a name several of us Duke people would know, and last year's backup, Braden Locke, are in a true quarterback battle. Running back is very deep, but Wisconsin doesn't really have a true lead guy yet. However, it's perceived to be that senior Ches Malusi and OU transferred Tawee Walker are going to carry the lion's share of work there at running back. Will Pauling returns at wide receiver after posting 800 yards, and Tretch Kikana is poised for a big year after a huge bowl game performance. I think, surprisingly, Wisconsin's wide receiver room is pretty deep, oddly enough. 3 offensive linemen return on the line for the Badgers. No shocker there. The Badgers always have good offensive line play. Should be the expectation again this year. John Pius, a William & Mary transfer, is going to join Syracuse transfer Leon Lowry at linebacker to be the 1-2 punch. Pius, an FCS All-American last year for the tribe of William & Mary. James Thompson had 29 tackles on the defensive line last year. However, he is being joined by a defensive line that, outside of him, is returning 2.5 tackles for loss. So the trenches on the defensive side could be really interesting. All Big Ten safety, Hunter Wohler, and all Big Ten cornerback Ricardo Halbin returned to lead a secondary that could be one of the tops in the conference. So Wisconsin could very much improve defensively. However, the quarterback battle is really going to be interesting. And if running back holds up, Wisconsin could push for 8 to 9 wins this year, but expect right around 7 to 8 again for the Badgers. We'll wrap things up here with breaking down Duke's running back room, and then we'll hit the mailbag as always. Obviously, we'll go ahead and get the big guy out of the way in the running back room. Jaquez Moore is back for his senior season. In his career, he's got 200 carries, 1,200 yards, and 11 TDs. The keys are his this year after splitting carries with Jordan Waters last year. It's going to be his show. Like, he's going to get the predominant number of carries. And Jaquez is like very good. Don't get me wrong, but when we get to the offensive line, you'll see why I'm a little bit concerned about this. He's got to get outside. He's not a very in between the tackles kind of runner. But if he can get outside, like you don't want to see him one on one in the open field because you're not going to get him down.
This is the guy. I think we all know how talented he is after he showed us last year. Just all the long runs, man, and just hard to tackle, elusive, athletic, very strong lower body. Injury should not be an issue. He's that kind of strong. Love that out of a running back. Don't want anybody out there out of paper mache. The guy I see in the 2-hole this year, Star Thomas, transfer from New Mexico State. Go Lobos. Another team we love over here. Go Lobos. And Star, 42 games, 380 carries, 2,100 yards, 20 touchdowns, 42 receptions, 309 yards, 5 touchdowns. Ideal third down running back. Great red zone running back. He's a guy you want in there if you're within the 10-yard line because as like you see a guy like Star back there, you just think they're going to run it, but he also is a pretty good pass catcher, and you slip him out in the flats, easy touchdowns. Get him in the schemes, get him playing, and I think good things are going to happen with our boy Star.
Yeah, Star is going to be the ideal like backup running back you want. He's gonna get a bunch of carries. He's gonna get a chance to prove himself. But again, kind of like honestly, when you look at it, it's kind of similar to the quarterback room. Looking down the roster, again, we're so young in the running back room. Like our skill guys are very young. So bringing in someone that and here's the thing: the difference in Star and some of the quarterbacks is he's still hungry. Like he understands he's coming in here to get the ball. Like he's gonna get a lot of work. This next one, and I've got a controversial opinion on this next guy. As we've all established, I run the Peyton Jones fan club. Peyton Jones, you're my hero. I want to be like you when I grow up. But he's got 20 carries for 71 yards going into a sophomore season. I damn near think, and this could be a crazy take, it may make him want to transfer. I think you redshirt him. Just because when you look down the roster at what all we've got that we're getting ready to talk about, I just think it makes the most sense to if he's not going to get significant more minutes and playing time and carries this year, why waste 2 full years of his eligibility if we really think he's that good, and I think he is, to be the third man, the fourth man, when sit him for a year, redshirt him, and then let him come in, have that extra year left to be the guy when that time gets here.
Yeah, I definitely think Peyton, if it just depends on like how Brewer and Manny's scheme is. Like, is it going to be built for him to get on the field? And if not, I could definitely see what you're saying going down. One guy that we definitely know is not redshirting, fellow transfer running back, Al Wooten, grad transfer from Mercer. Sorry, Duke QBs fans, PTSD. Come to a football game. Well, we got a boy from Mercer. Not even a boy, just a grown ass man. Al Wooten is gonna be like what was that guy that played Mike Talbert for the Panthers? For all you Panther fans out there. Yeah, it took me. I had to figure it out. The old encyclopedia is a little dusty, and but Mike Tolbert, for all you Panther lovers out there, not me and Tyler, but for all you guys, because there's way more of y'all than us. Mike Tolbert was an essential part of those Cam Newton Panthers teams. Very, very good. But all he was a bruiser. Go get you a yard, get you 2, get you 3, and always going to score touchdowns within the 5-yard line. This man, Al, is 6 foot 225, And on tape, he looks way bigger. Like he looks like he's 6'3", 260. Like dude's jacked. Probably the strongest running back we have by far. And we'll be seeing him in a big time like goal to go situations. But I'm excited for him. Really excited after watching his tape.
Yeah, I'm not gonna jump into stat predictions or anything, but like you said, if Duke finds themselves in a lot of goal line situations this year, like he could sneak and steal a bunch of touchdowns away from some of the other backs that are going to get more carries. Because I mean, and here's the other thing: he's coming in from Mercer to Duke. Like he's a grad transfer. He just wants to play ball. Like he just wants to get the ball and run somebody over this year. That's all he cares to do. So when he gets it, like he's gonna find someone and look to run you over, which is always good to have. Um, these next, so we'll go ahead and we'll save Marquise for last because we can have a good discussion there. We'll loop in redshirt freshman Karan Boyd and Travis Bates together. I think Bates could actually, if we go the route of redshirting Peyton Jones, I think Bates could find himself on the field some. Uh, he's very sneaky in terms of how good of a runner he is. He was a district champion long jumper in high school. For those of you that don't know that, he was the 36th ranked running back in his class when we brought him into Duke. He's young, but the problem is his whole running back room is young. So fall camp is going to be a really fun time to see like out of all these young guys who kind of carves in that spot because the third true running back spot is wide open. It's probably leaning towards Marquise or going to Peyton Jones because we've got Al, but I don't think Al is the third running back. I think he's more going to be like a quote
He's a
fullback.
specialist back, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He's not going to
He's
be
gonna
like
get he's gonna get touches, but you're not gonna put him like on a depth chart number because it's all situational.
yeah. So I mean, I think the third running back slot is wide open, and I can see Bates absolutely contending for it with Collins and Peyton. Cron Boyd, redshirt freshman, he actually got 6 carries last year. Um, he is listed as a running back, but in high school he played defensive back and wide receiver. So if the running back room gets overcrowded and we move him back to like one of his other positions, it's possible he carves out a role there. And honestly, I wouldn't hate seeing defensive back. I feel like our secondary needs some more bodies. And if he's any good, take him because I'm still worried about the secondary, but that's a topic for another day.
Yeah, and just getting into the end of it here with Marquise Collins, both of us are super high on this guy. Redshirted, which I thought was the right move. Number 10 ranked running back in the country, out of Texas as well. I mean, just a big time recruit in the state of Texas. He was a lot of people thought he was going to A&M. They thought that was like Elko's first get. Everybody thought he was out, and he was one that never faltered and looks like he's going to ride out Duke. And I hope that works out the best for him because dude's just got so much true raw running back talent. Like he needs to see the field. And I'm hoping, in whatever role that is this year, that he does well when he gets to see it. 4,500 all purpose yards and 64 touchdowns in 3 years of high school football in the greatest high school football state in the country in Texas. Like that's
Pretty good.
ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty damn good. And obviously we're focused on 2024 and what's going on with Duke. But when you think about it, everyone talked about Cutcliffe being like the quarterback guru, quarterback whisperer. Duke's always had really solid running back play as far back as I can remember. And I'm really excited to see what next year's running back room could look like when we've got a redshirted sophomore Marquise Collins getting ready to suit up. We'll have a potentially redshirted sophomore in Peyton Jones suiting up. We'll have Bates suiting up. I mean, like the running back room is. I'm going to say it'll be better next year, but there's a
Yeah.
lot of excitement this year. And to touch up one last guy, uh, true freshman Cole Denson comes in out of Rye Country Day School in Rye, New York, and Cole's got potential to if he builds and gets stronger, he's coming into Duke at 6 foot 185. So like if he grows and adds like weight in the offseason, he could slide into the power back role for us next year because when Wooten's gone, we'll have to refill that hole. So I mean, there's a chance that I would assume he redshirts, but there's a chance that starting next year, you bulk him up all off season long. There's your power back down the road, possibly. And with that being said, now before we wrap this up, as always, you guys delivered in the mailbag,
Mailbag
so
bitches.
we'll get to a few of these real quick. Our boy, all right. Well, you know what? We'll start with the goat, Ryan Parsons on Twitter at
Legend.
RyanPar27. Dude, Ryan always knocks it out of the park and gives us some great questions. He says, "What new Big Ten edition has the best chance to win the conference?" So technically, we've already touched on that with Oregon. So I'll kind of tweak it a little bit. We'll go with who do you think has the best long-term success in the Big Ten, Noah, out of the four new teams?
Yeah, it's gonna be Oregon for me all day. As long as Manning is there, and like he's there for a long time, unless the NFL comes calling. But I mean, he's a phenomenal coach, and I'm sold on everything he does and everything he's turning Oregon into. They are a way more physical football team than the old Oregon. They're more run oriented. They're bigger offensive line, better defense. Like they've shored up all the things that like Oklahoma and USC haven't been able to. And Oregon, I'm high on Oregon for the future. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Ryan, it's still going to be Oregon for both our answers, but especially like in today's NIL world, Oregon's just getting ready to. I'm not going to say they're going to run college football, but Oregon's always been a good program to begin with. But I think they're getting ready to take that next step into like the Ohio States of the world, where look, if you're making the top 10 list every year, Oregon's going to be in the top 5. Like they're getting ready to contend in the Big Ten, and it won't affect them any. We'll go next up. Our boy Crimroy at Crimroy12. By the way,
Roy?
Crim is running our new TikTok account we've made, and of course, it's still GA Scumbags. So make sure you give that a follow because Crim does a great job of making edits and videos for us and putting them on there.
Yeah, we'd
Crim
like
says,
to thank Prim real quick also just for he's taken on a role with the Scumbags as like a social media manager, giving us some content and things like that, video edits and all that kind of good stuff, which we hope keeps driving you guys into the pod and keeps everything interesting. We know just bland old picture posts can get boring, so really appreciative to Krim and his talents for helping us out with that. Big time scumbag.
yeah, Crim's on the younger side, so he's more technologically advanced than we are. So we really appreciate that out of him. Uh, but Crim says, what do we think the run to pass ratio is going to be with Brewer? And he then says the run game is strong this year with Jaquez in the senior season. He says, how much is that going to affect Malik Murphy, who is a pocket passer? So I'll piggyback off of that first. I think Brewer's gonna again. I've said it since the first episode. I think Brewer's gonna let Murphy sling the ball all over the place. I think our running game is going to be more of like running backs catching passes out of the backfield or screens and getting involved that way more than straight direct runs. Some options possibly with Malik. I don't think many. So if I had to put numbers on it, I'd say like 65-35 run to pass. In terms of how is the run game being strong going to affect Murphy, not at all. Like I don't expect us to use Malik in the run game hardly any. Again, we've got 30 running backs that we can hand the ball off to. So I don't think the run game's got any effect on how Malik's going to play this year.
Yeah, I instead of going with the percentage, I'm going like how many times I think the ball needs to be ran a game for this team to be successful. And I think Duke will be at its best offensively if we net at least 25 carries a game minimum. Whether that's split like a 15-5-5 or a 12-7-5, whatever, whatever we have to do. Anywhere from 22 to 25 carries minimum, and anything over that probably means we're putting belt to ass. So that's how I kind of looked at it. I hope that's what happens. I think that's pretty manageable. I think we're going to see an offense that can run the clock and chew the clock and make teams hate how fast they play. I think you're going to see Duke in a lot of different tempos, which is that's like a SMU Brewer staple. And it's going to be nice to see. Keeps teams on their heels. So it'll be something to enjoy for sure.
And keeping on the running back train here, Greg Heffley, our boy Greg Heffley, 2011. Greg says, "What running back are we expecting to play behind Moore?" We've already touched that with Star. I think we're both in agreement there. But he says, "What will that workload potentially look like?" So I would assume that Quez is he's going to touch. He's going to get. I'll do percent again. He's going to get 50% of the carries, every bit at least. After that, again, like it depends on situations. Like Wooten isn't going to get percentage wise a lot of carries, but if we get into short yardage a lot, then his carries are going to see a big increase. I think Star is. I think 1-2 is obvious with them probably getting 80% of the touches all year between Star and Quez, and then Wooten in power situations. But I'll let you go on that one too, Noah.
Yeah, I see it about the same way. It's like if we're going to do 25 carries a game minimum to be successful, I'm seeing 12 to 15 by Quez. I'm seeing 8 to 10, 8 to 12 by Star, and then anywhere from 3 to 5 touches between, Jones or, if it's situationally there, Star. I mean, not Star, Al. So that's how I kind of see it.
And so our last question, our boy Jason Rogers at JRO, and sorry Jason, not gonna read all your numbers. Jason and Cash are big fans of the podcast, and we love Jason and Cash. Cash is like the
Goats.
greatest young Duke fan of all time. Cash is just the goat. But Jason says, "What should the turnover chain look like?" And I've actually been putting a lot of thought into this one. Um, and I think really the simple answer here is you don't overdo it. I think it's either, I believe it was softball this year started the thing with like a home run trident. And I think that's just the simple go to. It's clean. It's not like super flashy, but it gets the guys something, and it stays Duke theme. So I think you just go with like a really cool looking, like, trident, pitchfork, whatever you want to go with.
Yeah, I interpreted this question maybe in a it's such a Durham answer, but I think instead of a turnover chain, we should just have like a pulled pork platter from Bullock's out there, and like if you get a pick, you get to go have you some vinegar based barbecue. I always thought the turnover chain at Miami was a little gaudy for my look. It's kind of too big and too loud. And that might just be the old man in me. Don't get me wrong. I'm 24, but it feels like 44 at the least. And I'm on the philosophy of let's get some hush puppies out there. It's a little vinegar based barbecue sauce, a little pulled pork, maybe some mac and cheese, little collards. I mean, is that gonna hurt anybody's feelings? You're telling me you wouldn't want to see Chandler Rivers go over there and smack a plate? Like I'm all in.
Yeah, that you know what? Now that I think about it, yeah, I take my answer back. Food wins every time. Uh, yeah, that was wow. I can't top that answer. So before we wrap things
Banger,
up,
Durham based.
Bull City, even though I know some people hate that still. Uh,
Oh God, yeah, don't get that crowd tore up. I've never understood that. Let's dive into that for a second.
yeah,
What's
here we go.
who said we couldn't use it? We're the only reason that city has a bar, has a restaurant left, is not just a homeless encampment. Durham and Duke are not the same, but they are nothing without the Blue Devils. Yeah. I hate to ruffle some feathers, but that thing's economically afloat and not because of
Yeah,
how busted Durham's metropolis is.
hey, you look. Yeah, you said it. I don't get the people that think we're not allowed to like be connected to each other, and it's
Yeah,
wild.
why can't we be cool with North Carolina Central? Like all those people are like that's North Carolina Central's thing. I'm like, why can't it be both of our things? We're both Durham. Like we both put out more workforce and graduates than anyone else in that area. Like for the city, for Durham. What we're here for is for that city. As much as we love Duke, we love Durham. You have to support the town around it, and it's super easy for like people at Chapel Hill to love Chapel Hill. people at state to love Raleigh, but the amount of like Duke hate for like Durham just has always been weird to me. And I've always had nothing but great encounters with any NCCU grad or fan I've met at football games, and like I've never heard a single one of them ever say like, "Oh, you guys do Bull City." It's like, hell yeah, everyone's repping Durham. Like that's my favorite part about playing the Eagles. It's like it's Durham Day. Everything about that game is Durham themed, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it's just a wild concept to me that you wouldn't support that the city and college that said college is based in would try to support one another, and it's just that's a topic we can have down the road again. But before we wrap this up, real quick, just again scheduling update. So this is gonna be uploaded on Sunday, August 14th. The following Sunday, on the 21st, we will upload our next episode, and that episode's gonna get fun. We're gonna break down the offensive line and the defensive line for Duke. And I know there are a ton of questions. Hell, we've got 30 questions on that ourselves. Hopefully, we can give some answers and a little credence there. We're also going to break down the SEC and the American Athletic Conference.
Oh, it just
So
means more.
that's right, just means more. And we'll get to break down Noah's other favorite school, the Longhorns, in that one. So again, from this Sunday forward, when you're hearing this podcast, there will be a new pod drop every week until the conclusion of the regular season for us. And we may do one I'm sure we'll do one for conference championship week too.
Oh yeah,
We
there's
will
gonna be
again.
bowl pods. It's not gonna be over for like break wise until the playoffs are over. Like we're dedicated to this. We thank you guys for listening. We appreciate that you guys are allowing us to speak on things that aren't just Duke. I feel like that gives a lot more insight to some people that might not know, and it might bring them to be more of a football fan. They might just enjoy the game itself more. And that in itself is the goal of the pod, is just to bring football people together. And we're very appreciative of you guys giving us that platform.
Yeah, I mean you said it beautifully right there. We want to talk Duke. We're a Duke pod. We both love Duke football more than anything, but we also want to talk like football. There's more football to the world than Duke football. And really, what's going on in other games more often than not affects Duke, like how other guys perform and how other teams perform and stuff. So, I mean, again, Noah said it wonderfully. Thank you guys. Whenever you're getting to hear this video, if you haven't done it, we're on Twitter at GA Scumbags1. We're on TikTok at GA Scumbags. We're on Instagram, GA Scumbags. And we're also, you're listening to this on YouTube. That's the only spot we're on. Please give us a subscription, share, like, follow, anything you want to do. And until next time, DDMF.